The Los Angeles Dodgers are orchestrating a move in complete silence that could fundamentally transform their championship roster, and the baseball world is sleeping on it. This isn't about chasing another ace pitcher or adding outfield depth. This is about fixing the one glaring weakness that's plagued them for 2 consecutive seasons. And they're planning to do it by targeting a player who just delivered one of the most electrifying offensive performances at his position. Bo Bashette is squarely on the Dodgers' radar, and when you start connecting the pieces of this puzzle, it becomes blindingly obvious that this isn't just media speculation or off-season rumor mill nonsense. This is a legitimate possibility that could solve multiple problems for Los Angeles while positioning them to dominate baseball for the next half-decade. The chess pieces are moving, the money is available, and the fit makes too much sense to ignore. Let's address the elephant in the room immediately because everyone's thinking it. Why would the Dodgers pursue Bo Bashette when they've got Mookie Betts manning shortstop, and he just finished 3rd in Gold Glove voting at that position? The answer requires looking beyond surface-level thinking and understanding what's actually best for maximizing value over the long term. Mookie accomplished exactly what he set out to prove last season. He silenced every critic who said he couldn't handle shortstop at his age. He played exceptional defense, made every routine play, and his final moment at the position was literally turning a game-ending double play to clinch the World Series championship. That's as storybook an ending as you could possibly write. Mission accomplished. Point proven. But now comes the critical question that front offices have to ask. Just because Mookie can play shortstop doesn't mean he should play shortstop for the next 7 years. Here's the reality that Dodgers management has to grapple with. Mookie Betts is still owed $235 million through 2032. That's 7 more seasons of extremely expensive baseball, 7 more years where you need him performing at an elite level to justify that contract. And while his defensive work at shortstop was impressive and deserving of praise, his offensive production took a noticeable and concerning hit. He finished the season with a 104 weighted runs created plus, which means he was only 4% above league average offensively. For a player of Mookie's astronomical salary and historical caliber, that represents a significant decline. Compare that to what Mookie has been throughout the majority of his Hall of Fame trajectory. Multiple seasons with 140 and 150 OPS plus figures, 30 plus home runs year after year, 40 plus doubles, the kind of complete offensive dominance that makes you a legitimate most valuable player candidate every single season. That version of Mookie Betts is a first ballot Hall of Famer and worth every penny. The version who plays solid defense at shortstop but hits like an above-average regular, that's a fundamentally different value proposition that should concern anyone making roster decisions. So here's where Bo Bashette enters this equation and everything starts making sense. What if the master plan is moving Mookie back to second base or possibly even the outfield where he's been elite in the past, letting him focus less on the intensive defensive preparation that shortstop demands and getting him back to being the elite offensive weapon he's been for most of his career? Then you fill shortstop or second base with someone like Bichette who can provide the consistent, powerful offensive production the Dodgers desperately missed from that position all season long. The numbers Bo Bashette put up last year before injury were absolutely outstanding, the kind of production that makes general managers start making phone calls. He posted a 134 OPS plus, meaning he was 34% better than league average offensively. He had a career-low strikeout rate and career-high contact rates on pitches both inside and outside the strike zone. The guy was absolutely demolishing baseballs before the knee injury ended his regular season in early September. And here's the fascinating aspect about that injury that actually worked in his favor from a perception and evaluation standpoint. He came back for the World Series clearly not at full strength, visibly hobbling around the bases, but still managed to go 8 for 23 with a massive 3-run home run in Game 7 of the World Series. He demonstrated beyond any doubt that he could perform on the absolute biggest stage in baseball, despite physical limitations and pain. That kind of toughness and clutch performance matters tremendously to teams evaluating whether a player can handle championship pressure and deliver when everything is on the line. The defensive concerns surrounding Bichette are absolutely real and can't be dismissed. He's been a below-average defender at shortstop with significantly negative defensive metrics over the past couple seasons, the kind of numbers that make you wince when you're building a championship-caliber roster. But here's what's genuinely interesting and potentially changes the entire conversation. During the World Series, Toronto moved him to second base with Andres Giménez playing shortstop, and Bichette looked perfectly comfortable and natural at the position. If that position change makes him even an average defender instead of a defensive liability, that completely transforms his value proposition and makes him significantly more attractive to contending teams. For the Dodgers specifically, second base has been an absolute revolving door of inadequate and frustrating production for multiple seasons now. Their collective second baseman hit just .239 last season and ranked 24th in all of Major League Baseball in OPS from that position. Think about that for a moment. One of the richest, most successful franchises in baseball had bottom-tier production from a premium position. The offense struggled mightily in the postseason, hitting just .233 overall and an absolutely anemic .213 after the wild card round. Yes, they hit enough clutch home runs when it mattered most, and yes, their rotation carried them to a championship, but adding consistent, reliable offensive production from the middle infield would make this already dangerous lineup exponentially more lethal. The financial side of this potential deal is where things get really fascinating and where the Dodgers' front office wizardry comes into play. Projections for Bo Bashette vary pretty wildly depending on which analyst or front office executive you ask. Some have him landing a 5-year deal worth $130 million. Others think he could potentially push closer to 8 years and $200 million given his age and upside. At the lower end of that projection range, he absolutely fits into the Dodgers' payroll structure, while still leaving substantial room to address bullpen needs and potentially add a lockdown closer. At 27 years old, Bichette is entering what should be the prime years of his career. You're not betting on what he used to be or hoping he somehow bounces back from decline. You're acquiring a player who just demonstrated he can hit at an elite level when healthy, who's improving his approach and plate discipline, who's getting better as he matures. The knee injury is obviously a legitimate concern that needs thorough medical evaluation and clearance. But if the Dodgers' doctors give him a clean bill of health, you're talking about potentially 6 to 8 years of premium offensive production from a position where the team desperately needs it. The other strategic factor worth seriously considering is what this move does for overall roster construction flexibility moving forward. If you sign Bichette and he plays second base with Mookie at shortstop, you've suddenly locked down 2 positions with above average to elite players for multiple years. That roster security frees you up to pursue outfield help through trades or other creative signings without constantly worrying about patching holes in your middle infield. The domino effect of that kind of stability cannot be overstated. Let's paint the picture of what this could actually look like in practice. You could potentially have a lineup featuring Bichette leading off or hitting second, followed by Mookie, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and whoever else they add this offseason. That's an absolutely stacked, terrifying top of the order with multiple guys who can hit for both average and power while also drawing walks and working counts. The balance and depth that lineup construction provides makes the entire batting order more dangerous because there's no easy out, no place for opposing pitchers to hide or catch their breath. The other strategically interesting element is how this potential signing impacts the rest of the free agent market and the Dodgers' remaining offseason plans. If the Dodgers commit significant money to Bichette, it probably means they're addressing outfield needs through trades and prospect capital rather than big-ticket free agent signings that would consume payroll space. Maybe that means aggressively pursuing someone like Jason Dominguez from the Yankees in a trade, or dealing for a young, controllable outfield piece rather than chasing Kyle Tucker or other premium free agent options who would command massive contracts. From Bichette's personal perspective, you have to genuinely wonder if the Dodgers would even be his top choice given his history and relationships. He's been with Toronto his entire professional career alongside Vladimir Guerrero Jr., his close friend and teammate. They've both talked publicly and repeatedly about wanting to win championships together, about building something special in Toronto. The Blue Jays are clearly trying to construct a contender, and if they're willing to pay market value and show commitment, returning home to finish what he started might be the most emotionally appealing option for Bo. But here's what the Dodgers can offer that Toronto simply cannot guarantee right now, which is immediate, undeniable championship contention. You're walking into a situation where you're the final piece of an already complete puzzle, rather than hoping everything else somehow comes together around you. You're playing alongside Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, and a supporting cast that just won a World Series championship. You're joining an organization with unlimited resources, player development excellence, and a track record of sustained success. If winning championships is the absolute priority above everything else, that pitch is extraordinarily hard to turn down. There's also typically the West Coast location factor that matters for certain players, especially those coming from Japan who want to minimize travel and maintain connections to home. But Bichette doesn't have that consideration weighing on his decision. He's a homegrown North American player who spent his entire career in Toronto. The geographic location and travel schedule considerations aren't necessarily selling points the way they might be for international players considering Los Angeles. What makes this entire situation absolutely fascinating from a baseball operations standpoint is how many different ways it could potentially play out, and how many variables are still in motion. Maybe the Dodgers successfully land Bichette and move Mookie to second base, creating one of the most potent offensive middle infield combinations in all of baseball. Maybe they decide after thorough evaluation that the defensive concerns are too significant to overlook and pivot to other available options. Maybe Bichette takes slightly less money to stay in Toronto and finish what he started there with his best friend. Maybe another team nobody's talking about right now comes out of nowhere with an offer that blows everyone else out of the water. The fundamental underlying question that the Dodgers front office has to answer is whether adding Bichette's offensive production is worth the financial investment, given his defensive limitations at shortstop and his recent injury history. On pure offensive talent and potential, he's absolutely worth pursuing aggressively. The strikeout numbers steadily improving, the contact rates getting demonstrably better, the power remaining consistent year over year, all of that evidence suggests he's genuinely developed and evolved as a hitter and isn't just experiencing a single career year outlier. But you're also betting substantial money on a knee that ended his season prematurely and clearly wasn't fully healed during his World Series performance. You're betting on a defensive profile that's been genuinely problematic at shortstop, somehow translating significantly better to second base. You're betting that the player you're committing years and dollars to is the 134 OPS plus version from last season, not the 87 OPS plus version from 2 years ago when everything went wrong. For a team like the Dodgers that's actively trying to win a third straight championship and establish a genuine dynasty, every single roster decision carries amplified weight and scrutiny. You cannot afford expensive mistakes when you're operating at that elite level with championship expectations every single year. Every dollar you commit to one player is a dollar that's no longer available to spend elsewhere on the roster. Every roster spot you fill is one less opening for internal development or other external additions. The pressure on the Dodgers front office right now is immense because they're trying to thread an impossibly narrow needle. They need to maintain their championship window with an aging core that includes Freddie Freeman, who's north of 35 years old. They need to maximize the prime years of Shohei Ohtani's historic contract. They need to ensure Mookie Betts remains an elite contributor for the duration of his massive deal. And they need to do all of this while also developing young talent, maintaining payroll flexibility despite astronomical commitments, and staying under luxury tax thresholds that even they have to occasionally consider. Adding Bo Bashette to this equation could be the move that pushes them over the top and cements another championship run. His bat in the middle of that lineup, protecting the stars around him, providing consistent run production, that could be the difference between another title and a disappointing playoff exit. The offensive production from second base was so poor last season that even league average production would represent a massive upgrade, and Bichette offers the potential for significantly above-average offense. But this move also carries substantial risk that cannot be ignored in the evaluation process. If the knee doesn't fully heal, if the defensive issues persist even at second base, if the offensive production from last season was an outlier rather than his new baseline, the Dodgers could find themselves locked into an expensive contract that hamstrings their flexibility for years. That's the nightmare scenario that keeps general managers awake at 3 in the morning, second-guessing every decision. The fascinating subplot here is what this means for the rest of the American League East and specifically for Toronto. If the Blue Jays lose Bo Bashette to the Dodgers, that's a devastating blow to their championship aspirations and their ability to keep Vladimir Guerrero Jr. happy and committed long-term. Losing both of them would set the franchise back years and potentially waste the prime years of their other core pieces. The pressure on Toronto's front office to match or exceed any Dodgers offer is enormous, and their financial resources are substantial even if not quite at Los Angeles levels. The next few weeks will be absolutely critical as these negotiations play out behind closed doors. Bichette's agent is undoubtedly fielding calls from multiple teams, leveraging interest to drive up the price, creating urgency among suitors. The Dodgers are likely conducting exhaustive medical evaluations, reviewing every defensive metric, projecting offensive performance across multiple scenarios, and determining exactly what they're willing to commit. This is high-stakes poker where every decision has massive ramifications, and one wrong move could haunt a franchise for half a decade. What we know for certain is that the Dodgers have identified second base as a critical area of need, that Bo Bashette represents one of the best available solutions to that problem, and that the financial resources exist to make this happen if they decide it's the right move. The defensive concerns can potentially be mitigated by moving him off shortstop. The injury concerns require medical clearance but aren't necessarily career-threatening if properly managed. The offensive upside is legitimate and could transform their lineup construction. If this deal happens, if Bo Bashette ends up wearing Dodger blue and patrolling second base at Chavez Ravine, we could be looking at one of the most potent offensive rosters ever assembled. The combination of Ohtani's generational talent, Betts' all-around excellence, Freeman's consistent production, and Bichette's emerging star power would create matchup nightmares for every opposing pitcher in baseball. There would be no easy outs, no opportunities to pitch around danger, no way to navigate that lineup without taking damage. That's the vision that has the Dodgers front office seriously considering this move despite the risks involved. That's the upside that makes committing substantial money worthwhile even with question marks remaining. And that's why this story deserves significantly more attention than it's currently receiving, because it could reshape the entire competitive landscape of baseball for the next 5 years. The Dodgers aren't content with one championship. They're not satisfied with back-to-back titles. They want to build a dynasty that dominates this era of baseball, and adding Bo Bashette could be the move that makes that ambition a reality. Make sure you smash that like button if you think the Dodgers should go all in on Bo Bashette, and hit subscribe because we're tracking every major move this offseason as teams position themselves for championship runs. Drop a comment below with your prediction. Does Bo Bashette end up in Los Angeles? Does he stay in Toronto with the Blue Jays? Or does another team swoop in and steal him from both? Let's debate it because this is about to get very interesting.